Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind. Let's watch.
I'm like, man, girl, your girl wants to go to bed.
Exactly. Why are you hammering me on that?
Because, like, what? I don't want to be with someone who wants to go out and party. That's why I'm hammering you about it.
Yikes. Triple yikes. No. I hope she rescinds what she just said. I don't want... Okay, I'm reeling. Let's rewind.
Girl wants to go to bed.
Exactly. Why are you hammering me on that?
Because, like, what? I don't want to be with someone who wants to go out and party.
I don't want to be with... I'm hammering on you because I don't want to be with someone who goes out and party. Even if he did go out and party, which I would not call what he did going out and party. I would call what he did in all likelihood making an appearance. Because in no world, if he's gone for an hour and he's only there for at tops, 30 minutes, in no world is that an acceptable amount of, not acceptable, but a meaningful amount of time that you go to an event, someone's birthday party. Showing up for a half an hour can be insulting to some people, but it might not have been. So that is not partying. That's a courtesy show up. And then, of course, you don't want to just sit there and not have at least one drink, Now, maybe he's lying. She's not refuting anything that he's saying. So let's just say that it's accurate. So that's not going out and partying. That's going to an event that he feels like he needs to go to or wants to, right? Who cares? Doesn't matter. So even if he was partying, that doesn't even matter. That detail of did he do something that was untoward? If he had stayed out till 2 or something, and then didn't drive drunk, but he takes an Uber home and he is like obnoxious and intoxicated. Even if that happened, which it's not even in the ballpark of that. Even if that happened, given the context, for her to say, I'm hammering you because I don't want to be with someone who goes out and parties. I don't. Now, if she's saying it's a deal breaker and I'm sorry, that's one thing, meaning that she recognizes that's unreasonable. But her tone and her history up until this point, there are many, many very concerning ticks in the column of abusive behavior. And I do not say that lightly. I don't know if it's happening. I don't know if it's all fake. I don't know if it's edited weird. I don't know how he feels about it. I don't know. But I do know that this show goes out to the general public and they watch this and assume that some of it is real, which I'm sure some of it is, but I can't know. And I consider it my job to point out things that might not seem like what they are, but they are what they are, which is it's definitely abusive. Now, if they stay together and everything continues as is, I don't know what we would see in 5 years. Would we see a furthering and a more intensifying of the abuse that I think I'm seeing, or would we see something else? Is this just a temporary thing? I can't know. I can't predict the future. Very often, though, when you see this sort of thing, it does get worse. And I say this so that you can know for yourself, so that you can protect yourself and the people you love. And as I've said before, if you are abusive, because you could actually be abusive like her or similar to her, or you were in the past, or you might be in the future, then calling it what it is will help you to know, oh, I'm doing that thing. I'm not hitting him, but I am engaging in control, which is what this is. We'll watch. Maybe she'll rescind this, and I doubt she will. Maybe the next day she'll be like, I'm sorry, I never should have said that. I doubt she will. But this, we've already heard, and I've already laid out that he felt emotionally coerced to have sex with her. I don't know if we would call that a sexual assault or a rape, but that says something. He said, I also don't know if he wasn't giving any signal, maybe he wasn't asserting himself at all, and she just thought he wanted to do it completely as well. Who knows? But I noted that when that happened in that first fight, right? Was that the first fight? So there was the fight in the kitchen, the clingy. That was the second fight, right? Oh, right. So I'm actually going back through my notes, and yeah, their first fight was after the party with the bean dip thing. Their second fight was after he was at work during the day, and then he met her friends. And then now we're seemingly in the beginning of their third fight, which I would take a guess and say that if this follows the typical pattern that I see clinically, and I said this at the very beginning, that he had a lot of patience in that first fight, but like Nick and Danielle, his patience will start to wane, and he will start to be less patient, more assertive, more defensive, more avoidant, more angry, more hurt, more concerned, more worried. And we did see in that second fight, so we'll look at it here too, that second fight in the kitchen, he wasn't as all giving. That first fight, he was really like trying to placate, trying to accommodate, trying to be nice. And then he's the one that went up to her, and he didn't say anything critical, or he didn't have any request. He basically just said, yes, I'm sorry, it's my fault. And I worried that if he continues to do that, it could be really bad for him. So we'll see the intensity of his response. And I'm sorry I'm drilling down on this, but I don't often get a chance to really drill down on this and really show things. And if I'm predicting this right, it should be interesting, I think, to y'all, aside from you clinicians that know this anyway. I want it to be interesting to you that I, in the very first fight, was speculating pretty strongly that the future would end up here, that we would see more fighting, they would get worse, he would get more defensive, she would become perhaps more escalated. I don't know if I talked about control, but in the second fight, I saw the signs, I pointed them out, I said, if this continues, her control, at least I thought this, will also progress. I'm jumping to a lot of conclusions, but there's a lot of ticks in that column. I don't want anyone to attack her for this. She doesn't wake up in the morning and decide to do this stuff. Often the most problematic or hated person on these shows is the person who deserves the most love and grace from us. Now, there are people that deserve to be attacked, people that are absolutely empirically harmful and don't take any responsibility and don't try to get help, or if they do, they don't really use therapy very well. Anyway, we don't know that about Chelsea. I feel so bad for her. I have treated so many people like her, and I've been in the trenches with them. And the amount of suffering and the complete lack of attunement and security and love that they have experienced in their life, the pain is so deep. It's the pain of a 3-year-old who's being abandoned for weeks. The pain that these people feel, and it's rational that they feel it. They transfer it onto their partners unfairly, but the pain is real. Anyway, so this is the beginning of a coercive control of you cannot have friends, and this is where it begins. And it's good to see this because the way that the internet talks about this element of an abusive relationship where they will isolate you is almost always framed as a volitional choice that the abusive person sets out to implement. I hope to you it doesn't look like she woke up this morning and says, I'm going to stop him from having friends because that's who I am and I'm tricking him. She is reacting off the cuff. It feels right to her. She brings this up and she's not completely, I'm guessing, sure as to what she's exactly upset about. She's sort of walking herself through it. And then she's walking herself through it and she's not getting what she wants from him. I don't know if he can do anything that would please her, but I imagine what she would want is him to say, yeah, I'm sorry that I left. I was a terrible partner, something like that. which would make no sense, right? But you could see 5 years down the road, after being abused and stripped away of your own agency, you could see someone in Jimmy's shoes actually say something like that, right? But, even believe it from the gaslighting. But anyway, so he says, what are you talking, like, I only was going for an hour. And then she says, I will give you that, because I think she was, surprised by being reminded of that. I don't think that was front and center. He's helping her. So that didn't, she's looking under a lot of rocks trying to find, why does she feel upset? Because she just feels very upset because of her past, because she's transferring. She doesn't know it. She feels like she was abandoned. She feels like she's being abandoned. It's a 10 out of 10. She deserves to feel that way. It is right that she feels that way. It is right that she feels that way, but he has nothing to do with it, is the thing. But she doesn't know that, I'm guessing. So then she is talking with, and then she's like, yeah, Mackenzie. And then at first it's still accusing, and then I think unbeknownst to her, she is recalling what happened, and she says, well, she asked me, and it was humiliating. And when she asked me, I just said, look, I'm tired. Girls got to sleep. And then he's like, okay, well, you just answered your own question. So what's happening? And she doesn't know where to go with that. So, and she's also not getting what she is, the fantasy that she's hoping from him, which, again, he can never provide. Take it from me, clinically, there's no solution to this. I've had clients, so the idea with the reparative work with these clients is there's a lot of emotional regulation. There's DBT kind of stuff, but the sort of stuff I do is more just general emotional regulation, cognitive behavioral therapy kind of stuff, self-awareness, and that can take a long time. And then the other prong of the therapy has to do with corrective experiences, and there's a lot of research on this, relational therapy. And the idea that goes back over 100 years is that as the relationship between client and therapist intensifies, and it's professional and ethical and it's all those things, but the individual who the client has never had closeness, and so when they finally get a safe relationship and a therapist that knows how to manage this, not only just behaviorally but also in their heart, will really make the client feel safe, perhaps for the very first time in their life. And then all of this need will come pouring out of them, of like, oh, finally have someone, and they'll be clingy to the therapist. Sometimes stalking the therapist or asking for more sessions or being very preoccupied, which is par for the course. That's a sign of therapy working. It's not a welcome side effect, but it has to happen given the way that the brain works. So through that intense relationship that the therapist doesn't necessarily engineer, but welcomes as a very clear sign that, okay, because without that you can't have repair. It's just like an acquaintance. You have to have that reality, that dependence, and then the therapist proceeds to professionally and ethically, with boundaries, with the frame of therapy, prove to the client that the client is worthy of security and love and worthy of not being abused, and that other people can indeed be trusted, and that when the client is on the fence of me thinking, I think he has my back, I think he can be trusted, but I have a feeling that he hates me. That's a common dilemma. And that question mark, that question needs to be repeatedly answered by me, by what I say, but also by my behavior. And one of the ways you prove it is that you are you stick with the client through thick and thin, even when the client is being very hostile, might even threaten to sue me, and I just love and stick with and stay differentiated, stay in contact, but hold on to my sanity. It's very hard. It's very, very hard. It's intense, and not every therapist wants to do this sort of thing or can. And many therapists don't even know what I'm even talking about, which is upsetting. But because a lot of these people end up in therapy. Anyway, so through that, the client learns over time, oh, I am lovable and I can trust other people. I am worth it. Other people do have love and don't always want to harm me, don't always want to leave me. And boy, have I tested this therapist so many times. I have put this person to the test and they have stuck with me. This person really must be trustworthy. Maybe I can trust other people. Maybe I don't have to, so there's the cognitive side of just like, maybe I don't have to constantly question other people, but through that reparative work, they actually don't get triggered as often and don't get triggered as intensely. So anyway, what she's doing right now is she's resorting, she feels a certain way and she's backed into a corner of, well, yeah, I did just say that Mackenzie called and I said I'm tired. So, there's a split second of like, well, why am I upset? But she's still upset. So then she goes for it and says, you will not have friends, essentially. It's not direct, but that's the dilemma he is now put in. He either has to say, okay, I won't have friends. I won't go out with anybody for any reason without you. But it sounds like she doesn't want to do that. Anyway, I won't do that. And is that okay? And then the victim will think, okay, we can finally relax. I've sacrificed a lot and maybe now everything will be okay. No, because the feeling stays. So the abuse continues and the agency and the power of the victim just gets smaller and smaller and smaller because there is no endpoint to the control. There is no endpoint to feeling secure from the abusive person. Until they recover from very focused treatment, from a very focused specialist, there is nothing that the victim can sacrifice that will make the abusive person feel secure enough such that they won't get triggered, such that they won't react with their typical habit of control. So I hope that all makes sense. And what we just saw was a triple yikes, because in context of everything else that's happening, she's in therapy now, but that doesn't guarantee anything. But and maybe Jimmy will say no at the altar or whatever. But without some major changes, there are some major signs that there's going to be a lot of suffering that she's going to cause. So let's watch.
Exactly. Why are you hammering me on that?
Because, I don't want to be with someone who wants to go out and party. That's why I'm hammering you about it, is because,
Maybe I drove there, I had one drink, and I came home.
But is that something I'm going to deal with?
I do like to go out and have drinks socially, and
So that was edited, but she didn't rescind what she said. She doubled down. It's not something I want to deal with, which is not a good sign. I was hoping, that she would say, well, you can go with your friends. And maybe she did say something like that and they edited it out, but I don't know. Let's continue watching.
that's more of a wine cocktail bars, or like maybe going to a brewery on a Saturday and getting home at a decent time and going to bed at a decent time.
I don't want that. I don't
I told
want
you that in
that.
pods.
No, it's not.
Okay, so I've heard some allegations from people that watch the show and maybe even other cast members that say that Jimmy had deceived her. So maybe this is what this is about. He certainly looks like he's telling the truth, right? And maybe he's not, or maybe he forgot, but let's rewind this. But I think what he's saying is, I said that I occasionally like to go to a wine bar or something. It sounds believable. Anyway, and then she says, but it's not something that I want. Okay, then you don't go. End of story. Like if I go to my friend's house to watch a football game, my wife's not into that. I've tried to drag her along at times, but it's just not her thing. So my wife isn't into that. End of conversation. Pretty easy solution. But what she's saying, what she's looking for is, okay, I will never do that again because you don't want that.
But
wine, cocktail bars, or like maybe going to a brewery on a Saturday and getting home at a decent time and going to bed at a decent time.
I don't want that. I don't want that.
I told you that in the pods.
No, it's not. You said you did not do anything in the pods. You said, I'm not into going out. I'm not that's not my thing.
I'm guessing that Jimmy, I don't know. Am I biased for Jimmy? I want to be clear. I don't know. He could have done all those things. He could have lied. I don't know. But given the track record of this couple and their behavior and the way he's looking, it seems likely that in the pods he says, I'm not an every night party, or I'm not even a frequent party. I don't stay out late. Earlier, just a bit, 10 seconds ago, he was saying I like to go to wine bars or a brew pub, and I like to have a few drinks and then come home at a reasonable hour. He said that. I like to come home at a reasonable hour. Now, maybe that's all lies. I don't know. But even then, let's say you're dating someone and they say, yeah, I'm not really the sort of person that does all that stuff. I like to get home at a reasonable hour. And then one night they stay out really late. Well, you're not going to be like, you lied to me. It would just be like, if you were concerned, you'd say, I thought you said, and then the person's like, well, I don't do it that often, or at least on my scale of what not that often means, it means this, and maybe they meant different things, right? I want to draw these distinctions because if you just watch the conversation, you could be, I think, tricked into thinking that there's actually something that they're fighting about. I have seen nothing yet. Now, maybe there is, and there's something that's being unsaid, or they'll eventually reveal it, but there is no basis for this conflict. Nothing. There is no reason. Nothing has happened. That's what people with this problem will do, is they will imagine threats. They will make up, they will interpret, they will invent attachment threats that don't exist, not because they're jerk faces, but because it was the assumption that usually would work out when they were children. They learned to basically assume abandonment and betrayal and harm is happening because, generally speaking, that was the case. And that gets locked in neurologically, and they have all that trauma that is unresolved, and so it just feels they carry it with them. I mean, not on purpose, but it's shackled to their neck, and so when things happen, the past and the present get all jumbled up. So, but I want to be clear about that because there's a lot of angles. If you're in his shoes, it's important to hold on to that so that you don't get tricked into thinking that there's a basis for the hostility or what she's doing. I mean, just think about the situation that, after the cameras left, he's like, oh, there's this birthday party of a friend. I got to make an appearance. I'm going to go. And then she's all bundled up, and he just knows not to ask. And she didn't want to go anyway, so they knew that about each other. He bolts. He gets there, one drink, stays for 15, 30 minutes, comes home. That's it. That's it. Gone for an hour, maybe hour, 15 minutes, whatever. That's what's at stake here. No cheating, no hint of cheating, no, I mean, I guess there's a chance that he cheated. He's a fast cheater. She doesn't have any evidence of cheating. All she has is one of her friends says, I see him. And what kind of a person sees him from across the room? And now maybe the person was like, hey girl, are you here? Because Jimmy's here. Are you around? I don't know. But I'll just say I don't know what Mackenzie did, but it's just another middle school bullshit thing that happened on this season. There's just so many little things where I'm like, if you were 13, I would get it, but I don't know. I'll give Mackenzie the benefit of the doubt. Maybe Mackenzie was just like, where are you? Or Mackenzie had been fed a bunch of things by her that made her believe that Jimmy was this horrible cheater or something, and so she was primed. I don't know. Who cares? But I want to be clear. So if you're in his position in a relationship, or you were in the past, and because this is how gaslighting works. This is how gaslighting begins. If he is coerced or lacks support, or his support is stripped away, or he has been through this before, or he lacks the self-esteem or the ability to protect himself from the onslaught, you are at a Y in the road. You can either continue to fight and incur more escalation and abuse from the abusive person, or you can just believe the bullshit and just convince yourself, yeah, I must have done something horrible last night. I don't know exactly, but I did. I'm so sorry, honey. Please stop abusing me. I won't ever do it again. You rinse and repeat that enough times, even if the first 100 times you still know that you didn't do anything wrong, but the 101st time you do that, your brain starts to believe it. It's easier to believe it than to not, because if you believe it, then you can quickly respond and avoid being abused. Fast forward 5 years, and you believe you have no ability to evaluate reality. And you believe that you are a piece of shit. You believe that you are to blame. You believe that you deserve the abuse. And she could never hit him. I don't think that will happen. I don't even know if she is like that, but I'm saying this as a jumping off point so that you can know to protect yourself.
You sat there and lied to me.
I didn't lie to you.
I hear from someone who knows you.
I said I love going to wine bars, I like going to cocktail bars, and I like getting home at a decent time.
Then I hear your man is out. Like, where are you? How embarrassing. Like, it's very embarrassing.
So she's spiraling. It's so weird. So, the beginning of this, there was the tiniest bit of tension, and I wouldn't even call it tension, but I felt tense because I know her pattern, and I said, there's a pretty good chance that we are at the beginning of a fight, and I'm guessing it gets worse from here, and I feel terrible for these two, particularly her, because there's a good chance that he won't stay with her in the same way that Nick and Danielle went, in the same way that all the, he doesn't come across like the sort of person that would not see at least this is not workable. But I don't know. So if that's true, I feel bad for him because he's being treated poorly, but I feel more bad for her because he can leave and might not ever be in another relationship like this again. She will always be in a relationship like this until she recovers, and the recovery could take decades of therapy. I've worked with couples, or I've worked with clients like her, and depending on the severity, which let's hope it's more on the mild side, minimum 5 years of intensive therapy with a specialist, and she meaningfully participates. She randomly finds a specialist, which isn't super easy. Even if I told her what sort of therapist to look for, and she actually looked for those phrases on their profiles, it wouldn't be guaranteed that therapist would actually know what they're talking about, or be a good match, or have an open slot. It's hard. So I feel more bad for her, truly, if I'm even close to the mark.
And now I feel like I'm getting a facade from you, and I don't like that.
I do like to go out every once in a while.
And I don't
But I just
like
want you to
that.
understand
So
where
why'd
I'm
you lie to
at.
me?
I want you to understand.
Yeah. There's a facade. Why did you lie to me? Yeah, it's just spinning out of control. Because a theme of this disorder is betrayal, abandonment and betrayal, abandonment and betrayal. And I'll just give you the name, borderline personality, but if you Google it or you've seen any TikToks about it, you probably have been misinformed. It is, everything I've been saying so far is I've been referring to borderline. Now, borderline is complicated. There's a lot of different types, or at least a few different distinct types and presentations and severities, and different clinicians will see it differently. There's a ton of stigma about it. There's many clinicians that will believe, I've heard this in consultation meetings, that you can never cure or you can never treat someone with borderline, which is ridiculous given all the research that demonstrates that you can. I just don't understand why people would believe such an unscientific thing. I personally, and my close colleagues, Bob being one of them, have effectively helped people with borderline personality. People with borderline personality are not evil the way that they're often portrayed. I guess they can be, but anyone can be evil. People with borderline personality can be good partners. You can recover halfway from your borderline personality and be, for the most part, completely functioning in your relationships. People with borderline personality often are successful in life. They're not more successful than other people, but they have regular lives. You wouldn't know that someone was borderline if you worked with them or they were your friend. They're not broken individuals. They're not horrible human beings. They just have a particular version of relational trauma that felt like abandonment and betrayal to them. Sometimes that's literally abandonment. Sometimes it's literally abandonment, meaning like dad just leaves, or both the parents have issues with drugs and alcohol, and the child's taken away. I'm trying to remember what we heard about Chelsea's early life. I don't have any notes about that. I assume I would have wrote something down if she had disclosed anything. She did say, I struggle with feeling lovable. She said, I've been cheated on a lot. And so normally when you hear someone say that, I've been cheated on a lot, you think, oh, that sounds terrible. And that certainly can contribute to this. But this typically is derived from early childhood experiences. If you're raised well enough and then you get cheated on a lot as an adult, it might result in like hints of this or temporary moments of this, but she's so, and I'm not diagnosing her. I want to be clear. No way am I diagnosing her. I hope it's clear that I never diagnose from afar, not just because I'm trying to avoid a lawsuit, which I don't think would ever happen anyway, but I actually don't believe I could possibly diagnose someone. I know I can't diagnose someone over a TV show. When I diagnose people with borderline personality, it might literally take me 12 months to gather enough information from a client that is very open in therapy and sharing a lot of information with me for 52 sessions for 52 weeks of the year. I need a lot. Now, maybe I need less time than that with some clients, like 2 months or something, but never with as little information as I know from her. So every bone in my body is not diagnosing her, because it'd be like saying that you would marry someone having only met them for 10 days. No one would ever do that anyway.
And I
just want you to understand where I'm at. I want you to understand where I'm at, because I haven't went out in 3 months.
Oh, I know where I was. So you have actual abandonment, you have actual betrayal, which can be things like lying, or even abandonment can feel like a betrayal. But also, you can have parents that are still together who abuse you, either emotionally or physically, sexually. It's often emotional abuse in my experience, but it could be any form of abuse. And typically, if you have physical abuse, it's also at least emotional abuse, verbal abuse. But for the child, they aren't being abandoned, but in essence, they are, right? Because as a parent, you are abandoning. It's sort of like when Obi-Wan says that Darth Vader killed your father, killed Anakin, your father, Luke. It's sort of a metaphor, right? Because your mother has left you and abandoned you, and now this person who looks like your mother, not literally, but the splitting, and that's another thing that people with borderline will do. I'm not diagnosing her, but it's a hallmark of borderline that there will be what we call splitting, and that they will idealize attachment figures, meaning that they're all good, they can do no wrong, and she kind of does that to Jimmy when things are going well. He's perfect, everything's great, to what we call devaluation, where there's no in between. You're either perfect and wonderful and needed and, oh my God, I just need you so much. And it's real. It's not an act. To as soon as there's even the slightest hint of abandonment, betrayal, or harm, it's boom, black and white to you are worth. I can't believe what you did to me. You're a liar. You're a cheater. You don't care about me. You treat me like shit. You didn't even kiss me today. You've lied. Like and it's real. And there's nothing in between. And you can't convince the person to see the gray zone in between, because developmentally they are not capable of it, because that is something that is developed early in life through secure attachment. Children feel that way about their parents. They either love you, love you, love you, and then they just hate you. And if you have kids, you've seen that. It's not like extreme, but it's pretty normalized, right? Parents are used to their kids just suddenly, it's like you're playing and they just love you and everything's fine, and then you say, okay, it's time to go to bed, and they just hate you. Even 7-year-olds, will do this sometimes, right? They still have a remnant of that. And with enough attunement and emotional reflecting, like, okay, you're very upset, and security and safety, the child will learn. They have this like experiential learning of like, oh, I guess no one's all good and no one is all bad. And mom is mostly good and sometimes really annoying, but even when she's annoying, I know that she's a good person. So certainly I can express my frustration, but I can't just be like completely unhinged with my upsetness towards her, because most of the time she's great. With people with borderline, they never had that security to make that shift, and so they retain that very infantile way of looking at attachments in particular. And so they're doomed to that. Now, with therapy and corrective experiences and cognitive behavioral therapy and emotional regulation, they can create workarounds in the temporary, and then eventually actually experience through their intense relationship with their therapist that there are gray. They will experience the gray and thus feel the gray and operate from the gray, rather than operating from what, where they're coming from. Because, you can tell them there's a gray zone, and they'll cognitively be able to understand it, but they do not internally believe it. The 1% of them, that is their prefrontal cortex, will say, yeah, I get it that nothing's black or white. But the 99% of them, the rest of their limbic system and the rest of their body, knows that there is only black and white. All right, well, let's adjourn there. And everyone, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really, really do.